All right. Welcome, everyone. Happy Wednesday. So happy to have you joining us. We'll get started in just a moment. We know that folks are just coming on to the call with us. Want to say thank you for joining us. And hi, Jill. Thank you for being here.
Aloha.
Jill, stuck in Hawaii.
Yeah, somebody's got to do it.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll get started in just a moment. Appreciate you joining us. For some of you, it's your lunch hour. Some of you, you're wishing the day was almost done.
And some of you, it's just breakfast.
That's right. Breakfast in paradise. Please be specific. All right, we like to get started right on time. So thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Anissa Avon and I'm the CEO of Turnkey Coaching and Development Solutions. And this talk is digital recruiting, making the shift to an online recruiting strategy with our expert today, Jill Silman-Chapman, with many initials after her name, mostly related to organizational development and HR for sure. Hello, Jill.
Hello.
I'm so glad that you could join us today. We've got a lot to talk about. So the first thing I want to do is introduce us to our speakers and say thank you to the folks that without them, our leading in a crisis summit would not have been possible. I'll introduce Insperity first. That works. Then you can go back.
See, I'm changing everything on you.
First, I want to say, no, you're good. First, I want to say thank you to David Whitmarsh and the Whitmarsh Consulting Group. David and his team of super talented folks specialize in multi-channel marketing, research projects, retargeting campaigns, and they are specifically qualified in the HR space and human resources information technology consulting. Our other sponsor is Insperity, which of course is Jill's friend there. So Jill's going to share with us a little bit more about that. But I want to let you guys know that Insperity has been very generous in providing a free HR financial analysis report and debrief. This is, in fact, a very high value freebie. We happen to know that 2020 has turned many of our HR friends' budgets and plans and strategic priorities on its ear. And this particular free report will take our business performance advisor over there at Insperity several hours to pull together. And it's a confidential report, budget analysis, and one-on-one debrief. The goal is to support you in just gaining insight into what's the real cost burden of being an employer and identify those costs associated with the life cycle of an employee, as well as compare your HR strategy and budget against successful organizations. So Insperity, you guys can take advantage of this at turnkeycoachingsolutions.net/HR report. And it looks like, am I still seeing your screen there, Jill?
Probably not, because what's the one thing that you hate happening when you do a presentation?
Is your internet going out?
So the internet went funky on me, and on top of that, we have the lawnmower right behind me now. So.
Well, it looks like it was intermittent, which is a good thing. So I just wanted to say thank you also to the fabulous team of experts that have helped bring about this leading in a crisis, actionable business and HR strategies for navigating crisis and change. That group has included my team, and my team really rallied. We have 40 plus experts and counting. We will be meeting and sharing their insights every Wednesday and Thursday throughout April and now into May. So do check back often at our Leading in a Crisis Summit area. I know you're getting emails. If you're getting too many, there's a little button where you can say, send me less. Do let us know what talks you'd like to see, what experts we can bring forward. I want you to know that if there is a topic or a focus that you'd like for us to share, I will scour our network and their network in order to bring that expert forward in that talk. So let's introduce you, Jill. Share with us your expertise. What makes you the expert on this? There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. What makes you the expert here on this digital recruiting, and what are we going to learn today?
Right. So basically, my gray hair comes naturally because I have more years than I'd care to admit to in the recruiting space. So this is what I've done my entire career in some form or fashion, and I've watched it. I've watched it change tremendously over the years to a place now where we are talking about taking it almost fully digital. Um, there is still opportunity for the humanness in human resources and in recruiting in particular. But I think that I think more than anything, this COVID-19 experiment that we're all living with has taught us that we've got to be nimble enough to be able to move to a more digital environment. And I think it's just paving the way for us to do something different moving forward, COVID or no COVID. So,
Yeah, I think that's fair.
yeah.
And I do believe that we've got many of our peers who absolutely have openings, and the COVID-19 situation is going to make those openings filling those openings very different than
Right.
pre-COVID, post-COVID, et cetera. So
Right.
I'm looking forward
Right.
to what you have to share.
Yeah, it's been really encouraging. Our numbers for recruiting we certainly have some opportunities on hold at Insperity, but last weekend, for example, more than 200 people found new jobs through us just over the weekend, from Friday to Monday. So
that's fantastic.
People are still hiring. So it's not like this has stopped just because of COVID-19.
Beautiful.
So let's talk about this for a minute, because when we talk about digital recruiting, yes, I think perhaps some of you who are tuning in today or listening to the recording are wanting to know, how can I do this fast? How can I do this just to kind of get me through this COVID-19 and the work from home programs that we all have? But this is really an entire process. So I want to talk to the idea of digital recruiting going all the way back from how we advertise or how we source for our candidates, how we go and look for our candidates, to maybe making some of this mobile applicable, because surprisingly, so many employers still haven't built that bridge to make mobile enable their job requisitions for the community. I also want to talk a little bit about moving your assessments from something that you might have done on paper or in person to something online. We'll talk about social recruiting, and we will spend some time on virtual interviewing because all of this is important, and it's important for us to build something that's going to last, as I keep saying, post COVID-19. So I think that many of us have played with these ideas, maybe going with social recruitment perhaps, or maybe even adding the mobile phone element to our packaging. But COVID-19 entered, we had to stop and think, should we just suspend hiring? Well, a lot of us can't suspend hiring, right? So what are we going to do to be able to accommodate those candidates to be able to move from a face-to-face environment to a virtual environment? And if we invest in some of the technologies that help us with this, or invest our time even in some of the work that needs to be done to be able to do this, how can that live on later on when we all come back to the office, if you will? There are a number of employers, as I've mentioned before, that have said, no, we're just going to pick it up and take it virtual. Google, Amazon, my company, Insperity. We're all using the digital technologies to be able to fulfill our hiring needs. So doing it virtually isn't that difficult. But let's go ahead and take a look at the entire gamut of what we can do with this sort of thing. I think that, first of all, what we need to think about is the business case for why would we want to do this? Well, again, we can't suspend hiring just because some of us are having to work from home. We have needs, and possibly we have needs that have erupted because we are working from home that didn't exist if we were all back in the office. I think that this whole COVID experiment is showing us a lot of areas in our organizations where maybe we had gaps before, and some things that we might not have recognized so fully until we move to this more of what I'm going to call a results-only workforce, right? Where we're seeing everyone's output and seeing how they're managing their work every day. So I think it's brought up some gaps for us, and perhaps we need to solve some of those situations. Well, if we move to an environment where people can work from home, doesn't matter where their home is, right? Right. So if we move to a more digital recruiting environment, it expands our reach, right? We can reach out to people all across the globe if we wanted to, you know. And I think that, you know, I get it. Unemployment's sky high right now, and it's probably going to grow some more before this is all over. But at some point, the economy is going to reopen, right? And furloughs are going to end, full-time hours and wages are going to come back. And then we're going to be right where we were before this happened, in a talent war. And so if we can build in these things that extend our reach to look at pools of people that we might not have considered otherwise, I think that's a great business case for going digital. Also, just the efficiencies of doing something like this. If you can source, if you can select, if you can hire candidates with tools that take less time and less bandwidth of your employees probably, then I think that that's much more manageable and a better use of our resources and our time and attention. So again, that speaks right to the higher ROI. Yeah, there may be some things that you have to invest in to make this work, to take you from where you are now to where you want to be. But I think the ROI of people who have been doing this for a while have seen that it is there. You're going to be more efficient. You're going to hire more effectively. You're going to be able to hire the top performing candidates in a very in a compressed time frame. And I think that that's pretty simple for higher ROI. You know, the fact of the matter is there's billions of people on the internet, right? 4.4 billion, something like that. And so whether they're reading the news or they're shopping or they're, you know, making their post-pandemic travel plans, whatever they might be doing. But the internet has revolutionized our lives. Why wouldn't it revolutionize the way that we go about trying to identify our candidate pool? You need to be online if you're not already. So we have to kind of back up. We can't just jump into virtual interviewing. I think we have to talk about how do we get people engaged in the process at the outset so that they're ready for a virtual interview, right? And so that means that you've got to build in a solid social media strategy, right? And if you don't already have a social media presence, that has to change. All the stats, they speak for themselves that employers who use social media to hire, they see about a 50% improvement in candidate quality. And so once you've built in that social media work, and you're able to use it to publish a post and publish videos and engage in discussions with potential candidates, I think that you're going to see, you know, your talent pool expand and for the better. I think it is. So there's all sorts of ways to be able to engage on the social media front, whether that's publishing job postings on LinkedIn or, you know, using videos so that you can showcase your employee testimonials maybe on YouTube, or you can tweet about company awards or company events that you're doing. You could establish a presence on Facebook, and then also, not even those popular ones that you think about, but your industry may very much have like some social media platforms that are very niche-y, you know, just for your industry. So again, that's a great way to connect. And what this is doing is allowing you to push your message out so people can find you as an attraction campaign. So you're not having to spend all your effort trying to find them. Let them come to you. And the more that you can demonstrate who you are on social media as an organization, the more you're going to find the right talent stays in with you. And the wrong talent selects themselves out. And they say, you know what, that doesn't look like me, that doesn't act like me, that doesn't sound like me, I'm going to move on. But those who do gravitate to your messaging, do gravitate to your culture, those are the people who will stick with you and stay with you via a social media campaign. So there are some things that just some takeaways, I think, for you if you want to expand your social media footprint. And I think it does require some management. So whoever is good at this, and maybe you have 2 or 3 people within your own organization that live on some of these different platforms. Use those people. They already understand how to work the platforms, right? So you're not having to educate somebody. They see what other competitors are doing on there. They see what other companies are doing on there. So utilize their experience and then be able to offer them the opportunity to engage with your candidate pool via the various platforms. Some things that you want to remember, some takeaways are that you want to make sure that whoever you assign to do this is responsive. right? You don't want to let a comment or something to go unanswered or unaddressed, if you will. So you want to make sure that that you stay connected to this pool, and that the person that that you have to do this is very responsive. You also want to make sure that you tie it back to your application process. It's no good for them to find you here if they have no call to action or nothing to do with it. So make sure that it's always tracked back to whatever your application process is. And also make sure that you're using hashtags smartly, because you can use hashtags on now every one of these platforms to be able to keep a conversation going with your audience, to be able to attract people in, and then keep them up to date, if you will, by using the hashtags. And another thing, not only just the people that you handpick to be able to help you manage this, but you also want to encourage all your other employees to use social media and engage with this candidate pool, you know, by way of posting testimonials or sharing insights or posting something fun that they're doing from home, you know, working from home and they had a happy hour or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, being able to share those sorts of things. So it becomes very real to that, to the group that you're trying to engage with. And then something else that I could share with you, that not a lot of people, I don't see a lot of people doing this, but I don't know if you're familiar with the term UTM. UTMs are these, sometimes you see them, they come after a URL, they're just a simple little string of text, really. And so a lot of times people will use these, and there's a site that for free will do this. It's called utm.io. And they'll add what social media platform you're using, and what medium is your ads, you know, published. So maybe it was you're on LinkedIn and your ads published on Indeed. So it would have LinkedIn and Indeed behind it, so you can track this back. You know where people are coming from. You know that they came because you posted on Indeed, and that they found it via LinkedIn or something along those lines. So that's a little tip or trick that not everybody's utilizing, but could be great in monitoring your metrics for how is social media working out for you as you try to reach your candidate pool.
Well, and on that note, we're seeing clients who are really successful at that social media outreach, utilizing those tracking mechanisms to also invite their employees to share with their network in ways, many of them that offer that, you know, the $500 bonus if someone that you refer to us gets hired. And we know that from statistics that the likelihood of a candidate being a strong fit is more likely when it comes from a referral, when it comes from an employee that's already at the organization. And it's much more difficult to have an employee refer someone without their social media, without the mechanism that makes it easy for them to share. And so what you're sharing is making it a part of, it's not their only strategy, but a part of their digital recruiting strategy. At this point, it's not a, oh yeah, maybe we should do social media. It truly needs to become a piece of the equation. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. If you're not there now, you need to be, because that's where everybody's hanging out, you know, your employees and your potential employees. So fish where the fish are, right? And that's why it's important. I think some of the things, because so you build a profile, so you build an account on these different social media platforms. You got to use it, right? From a recruiter perspective, like if I go and look at a potential employee, a candidate, and I see that they built a LinkedIn profile and nothing, that's it, just bare bones LinkedIn profile. I know he went to some seminar somewhere and somebody said, oh, you need to build a LinkedIn profile. And then they did absolutely nothing with it. That makes me a little suspicious, a little worried, like how technically savvy are they, right? Or perhaps even what are they hiding, or what, you know, why aren't they keeping this up? So you have to make sure that if you go this route, that you're committed to the follow-up. Whether it's pushing content out to have your employees share it, but what kind of content, right? Like, what do you put on there? I think that anything that's relevant to your pool, you know who your candidates are, you know kind of where they hang out. If you don't, poll your people who are currently working for you, ask them where they hang out online and what they're interested in, because that will give you great information or a great way to build in some of the content. but you could write blog posts. You could put a post on LinkedIn, just a little bit of content. Pictures do so well in a social media campaign. But you want to look at the places where your candidates are hanging out and see those sorts of things that are most engaging on that platform. Usually a post with a picture does much better. Posts with videos, that's a great opportunity as well. And then you can have this stuff kind of do double duty, because it could work on your social media platform, and then you copy and paste that same stuff on your career website. So it brings them back somewhere else. They can catch it from all directions, if you will. So you could have your company website, you can have your external blogs, and all of these things are talking back and forth to each other. So post it once, they get triple duty out of it, if you will. Also, just finding cool things in your industry. Maybe it's a salary report, especially if you pay on the high end of your industry. Maybe you publish some sort of salary report, or just basic industry news and updates, a place where you can be seen as an expert in that industry and somebody who's in the know and kind of with it, if you will. But those are just some of the things that you could harness, in posts to be able to be relevant and speak to your candidate pool with something that they're interested in hearing about. Some other things that you want to think about is beyond just the professional, right? Because you're hiring the whole person. The whole person comes to work. We can want to think that they put their work hat on and then they take it off and it's their home hat, but really the whole person is coming to work. So appeal to them on all those different levels. And so watch your candidate pool, see where their online habits are, see what their interests are, what general lifestyle things are going on with these people. And maybe that's some of your content, right? That you begin to talk about rock climbing, because it appears that everybody that you're interested in does rock climbing on the weekend. And so maybe you can share some places, best places to go rock climbing or something like that. But all of this stuff that you have at your disposal, push it out under your brand. And I think that it would convince potential talent to stick with you. And to hang with you until you're ready to bring them on board within your organization.
Yeah, on that note, the ones that we're seeing that are the most active in the content their ideal candidates are looking for, but also what's going on in the organization, as you were saying. I'm seeing, the awards. We just won an award, and a lineup of employees who made it into their 6th month or made it into their 16th year, or there is this culture of an organization that is represented by what they're sharing in these areas. And you can't do that on your job posting on your website per se. You can't do that on your monster.com job posting, but you can do it with your social media component.
Because that's what it's all about. Again, to the point of, you want people to self-select in that match your culture and are the kind of people that you're looking for. And you actually kind of want the people who aren't part of your world to keep on trucking, right? To keep on going, because we don't have that kind of time and energy to spend it on somebody who isn't really going to fit our culture moving forward. Before we leave about the content, I think we have to talk about the comment section. I said something earlier about, you want to make sure you have somebody who's Johnny on the spot, but with so much going on in social media and all these other sites that have been built now that are kind of employer ranking kind of sites or employer feedback type sites, the Glassdoors of the world, you need to make sure that you have somebody who's watching that. And there may be the occasional slip up that maybe your organization had in working with a particular candidate or something like that, something that didn't go the candidate's way, something that didn't go a former employee's way. Those things are going to happen. Unfortunately, with those sites, you can't take that stuff down. But I don't know that you want to take those things down, because I think it's about the transparency of the organization, because you don't get it right all the time, and nobody does, and nobody expects that. But what they do expect is that you remedy the situation as soon as you're made aware of it. So if you have someone constantly monitoring that, making sure that the links work and that sort of thing, but when somebody does post a negative comment or complaint, that you address it. Don't get in a war with these people, right? You're not wanting to, come in with your boxing gloves on. You don't want to put some sort of passive aggressive kind of comment, as a response. But really emphasize your commitment to clear communication, constant improvement, and that you value their feedback and you want to take that under advisement, and you will be doing these steps to rectify any issues that arise. That's what somebody complains for. They want to know that it's going to be better the next time. And so make sure that you do not just look at what you're pushing out, but what you're receiving from them, and making sure that you're staying on top of that sort of thing as well. So.
Yeah, I suspect that the organizations that are doing this really well, in this conversation, we're only a piece of the way done, and there's already so many considerations, and it's so much more than here's our job post, and so the clarity that you're providing is, there is one thing where you're posting your job. Here's, people apply. And then there's another where you're selling your brand and your culture and all of those other pieces. And the right mix sounds like having someone that can be dedicated to the social media recruitment piece of it, or at bare minimum, making sure someone's got their finger on the pulse of it.
Right. And it may be that you split it up amongst a team of people. Again, those people who are great on those platforms, use that skill. They know how the platform works. They know what the expectations are on that platform. Just make sure that you do have somebody assigned to monitoring the feedback on any of those social media posts or on any of these employer ratings to keep your brand consistent and to keep it honest, if you will. And I think all that kind of goes to making this easy for the candidate experience. I cannot talk about recruiting without talking about the candidate experience, right? And that's so hard when it's your own organization to be kind of objective, if you will, about what the candidate experience is. So I am advocating that you take a look at your candidate experience from a candidate's point of view. Either you step out and shop the way that a candidate would find you online, respond to the ads, go through the whole process. What does that feel like to be a candidate? Or pay somebody else to do it, and just see where there's gaps, where there's issues, because again, we may be overrun for the short term with a candidate pool. That's not going to last for a long time. It's just not. You're going to find perhaps in your industry that people are going to want to move out of your industry because it wasn't deemed to be essential during this time, or certain skills. And so we're going to have a war for talent that's going to persist after this this pandemic is put to rest, if you will. So we've got to be managing that candidate experience. And I think really what it boils down to, whether it's via social media, via your postings, via telephone or email or whatever communication tools you have, if you don't do anything else or remember anything else from this conversation, remember to communicate, right? It's about transparency. When we talk to organizations, when we talk to what are people looking for when they join an organization, they just want it to be transparent and true, right? And so make sure that your candidate experience is walking the talk. So if you have this great branding strategy and you're out there on social media and you're saying you're all sorts of a cool company, but yet it breaks as soon as they try to apply because you don't have technology working correctly, that's a misstep, right? So make sure that you understand how it is and that you communicate often and regularly with your candidate pool. And so that's really kind of moving us from the attraction phase and into, once they're here with us, what are we going to do? So making sure that you're keeping your candidates updated on what's going on with your organizations, how you're handling the pandemic. What are your employees experiencing and how are you helping your employees? But if they're an applicant in process, communicating with them as clearly and as regularly as possible, updates about the status of their application. So if they apply with you and it goes in a black hole, that's no bueno, right? So we need to make sure that we're providing updates and that we're trying to stick to our hiring timelines. Things happen, emergencies come up, and people understand that, but they don't understand being just left out there to wonder. I'm going to use my son's internship as an example here. He's heard nothing. He's reached out twice. Are they going to do internships? Are they not going to do internships? Maybe they don't know but that's okay. Just tell us you don't know. You know, instead of just leaving somebody out there going, what am I supposed to be doing here? Because he really wants that particular internship. And if it doesn't come through, you know, clearly he's going to look for other things, but he doesn't want to tell another employer he could go do something for him if this one was going to come through. So it's that whole sticking to your hiring timeline, being honest and transparent and communicating. That's part of the candidate feedback. And so, or the candidate experience. And that reminds me of feedback. That's what my brain was jumping ahead. But if you can create feedback loops as you go digital, ways to hear back from candidates at different steps of the process, that's going to help you too to see if there's places where it's broken, or to really leverage places where you're doing a great job, right? And it's not a one and done kind of thing. You're constantly looking at your digital recruiting strategies and improvement ongoing, right? It's not just about what you're doing in this attraction phase, but now we're starting to talk about the interviewing and assessment phases. So it's all the way through the process for your candidates.
What would be the advice that you would give? You know, that I think that the case you're making for sticking to your timeline and outward communication to candidates is really important. I've also seen a lot of organizations simply feel like they can't do that they don't have the bandwidth, the resources to communicate well. I got your bio, I got your resume, we'll be in touch if. You know, it's clear that could be damaging to a company's hiring sexiness, we'll just call it. Right. But at the same time, you know, what's a good rule of thumb? If you can't individually respond to everyone, what would you suggest, or what's a rule of thumb for how often they need to make a better effort at that?
Right. So I think it has to do, I think it's a great case for going digital, right? And adding technology, this layer of technology into your process, because it can do some of this stuff for you, right? I don't know that you always have to be on the phone with everybody, but you could send out messaging. So you can blast messages if you, you know, if you've gone digital with your applicant tracking system, or you know, even if you just have to handpick everybody's email address and send it out via Outlook or something like that. But there's a lot of times that you can use technology to be able to do some of these things for you. Because again, I don't think that everybody expects that you hire them like that. I think everybody expects that you're giving regular feedback. So to your question about, well, what is regular? What's appropriate? I think as long as you're setting your milestones with those candidates, I will reach out in 7 days. I will reach out in 2 weeks. I will call you on Tuesday. And then you stick to those. I don't think that it has to be once a week. If you've said, I can't call you for 2 weeks, okay, that they know that in 2 weeks they should be looking for your phone call or for your email or for whatever the update is. So I think as long as you can agree on what that communication looks like and the tools that you're going to use to communicate, whether it's text or you know, email or a phone call, I think that it doesn't matter. It's just being consistent.
Very good. Very good. It does. And I've got one more question for you. We know that most internet users are now using our telephones and our smartphones as opposed to our laptops. And yet many sites are still not mobile ready. What's your feedback around, you know, getting your site right for mobile viewing?
Right. So it's a necessity now, because a lot of people don't even own laptops anymore. It is their tablet or their, you know, or their phone, and even a tablet responds differently than a laptop does, right? To websites. So if you haven't done that step, okay, maybe that's step number one, because that we're a mobile enabled culture. So people don't have time to go, oh, I need to remember that URL, and when I go home, I'll fire up my laptop and then no, you've missed your opportunity. So those one-step applies, those ways that you can make it where it's easy to see it on a mobile screen, a little bitty tiny screen that they're not scrolling, or it's half over here and half over there and you can't find the search bar, and you know, all those sorts of things is a necessity now, because that's the device that everybody's using to try to find you. Just like they found you on your social media network was probably on their phone, then make it easy to click through that and to make an application with you, or to request some sort of follow-up with your organization. And so it's not even a if you know, I wanted to do this. It's a, I must do this, right? And yesterday.
So if HR is going to go through the effort, make the effort to implement a digital recruiting strategy, number one is work with your IT department to get
absolutely
your career site mobile friendly.
Right, right. And, you know, honestly, I would think that your IT department would want to make all components of your website mobile friendly, right? And the landing pages for the career site just being part of that package. But some of us have separate sites, completely different sites, completely different URLs for our our career sites. But yes, make sure that, and your applicant tracking system, if you bought into an applicant tracking system in which you're, you know, you're feeding your candidates into, make sure that that's mobile enabled as well, because, you know, another stop, if they're coming through, they click through your website beautifully, but then I can't see the whole job description. Can't find the apply button. I can't, you know, all those sorts of things. So making sure that, again, that kind of speaks to that candidate experience of you acting like a candidate and seeing what it feels like, you know, to be a candidate in that particular.
Very good.
Yeah. So mobile is without question very much a part of the digital recruiting technologies, and it's a must. Like in 2019, a must.
Right.
Yeah.
Seems obvious, but we have had experience with many.
But it's, people don't think about it, especially if you don't do a lot of hiring. Because I do know that we probably have some small and medium-sized companies with us today, and maybe hiring is not something that happens every single day in their world. And so you forget about some of these things, you know, or you just don't think about them. And again, that speaks to acting like a candidate every now and again to see what it might feel like. And so when we talk about candidates, and we've attracted these candidates to us, but now we need to interview them. And in the days of COVID-19, where you certainly can't bring them into the office and shake their hand as a welcome sign into your organization to show them your culture, we're having to take this online. And it can be very, very simple. You can use some simple tools. You can use Zoom. You could use Skype. You use FaceTime on your iPhone if that's what you have, to create that still a two-way communication, but using the video camera as the component to be able to see and to feel that candidate. And I get a lot of pushback. They're like, oh, this wouldn't be like, you know, interviewing them in the office. It's not, but at least with the video component, you can look at facial expressions. You can look at how, you know, they carry themselves. Do they talk with their hands like I do all the time? That sort of thing. But you can gauge their energy level. You can do a lot, because really, quite frankly, what our messages, like only 7% of it is what we actually say, right? So if we're only doing things on the phone because we're all working from home, we're missing a huge part of the communication. If we can add that layer of video where we can see their reactions, then I think that we've upped our game, and it's so simple to initiate that now. You know, like Google, Amazon, Facebook, all of those big guys, immediately when the work from home edict came out, we're able to pick up and change, just because they enabled using that kind of technology, that easy, quick technology, to be able to do the interviewing online via Zoom and Google Hangouts, and I'm sure Google's using Google Hangouts, right?
Right.
But there's all sorts of those kind of communication tools that you can use. Right now, I think it's important to also talk about the idea of digital interviewing, video interviewing that's a one-way interview. There's a lot of tools out there that you can buy and implement that allows for one-way interviewing. And what that looks like, if you're not familiar with that, is that you would push questions to your candidate. They would answer those questions. They would video themselves answering those questions, send that video back to you, and you could review it at, you know, whatever time of the day or night that works for you. So that's an advantage to doing that one-way kind of interview. It gives them the flexibility over their schedule so that they can record the interview when it's most convenient for them, maybe when the kids have been put to bed or that sort of thing, and they can get some quiet time to be able to concentrate or devote to actually answering the questions. It does give them possibly an opportunity to, if they kind of fumble through an answer, to re-record so that they present themselves to maybe feel a little more confident and comfortable with those sorts of things. And again, for the employer, it gives you the opportunity to review that when it's good for you. It works with your schedule. So it gives you much more bandwidth in your hiring. You're not locked into a certain time and schedule. I think that for both, whether it's a two-way interview or a one-way interview, there are benefits to the employer of doing it this way. Clearly, if you were having to fly people into your organization to do interviews, you've saved a ton of money if you can Skype those interviews instead. And just the schedule, it's so much easier to schedule something where you can log on, 5 minutes ahead of time, go through your interview and log back off, than having somebody have to drive to the interview or fly to the interview and that sort of thing. So I think that that's a real plus or a reason that you want to investigate this idea of a Skype interview. Even post-pandemic, you may still want to bring them into the office, but maybe this is your first route. This is your first interview, is a face-to-face interview rather than that usual phone screen that you're doing with candidates.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is worthy of consideration, it goes back to what you said earlier about thinking about the candidate experience. We've had some friends and associates talk about, especially now, COVID, in our world right now, who are applying, and some of them are applying and responding to for the first time ever to one-way video interviews. And not all technology in that realm is created equal.
Correct.
We have some friends, a friend in particular, who she shared all she got out in the interview. They said it was like, okay, answer this question. And the video comes on and she looks up and she's like, oh dear. And the video shuts off. That was it. No chance to press pause, redo, replay. That was it. No, she was obviously not a right fit.
Right.
So the end user candidate experience matters in this technology solution as much as any of the other.
To be sure. So if one way is the direction you go, one way, I see a lot of people use one way if it's high volume hiring, right? So the questions aren't that deep usually. They're pretty quick for somebody to, to be able to read and respond fairly quickly. But another thing that it shows you from a hiring manager perspective is digital fluency, on the part of the candidate as well. And clearly that's going to be important for our futures, moving forward. So that's another, I think that's another plus, but make sure that you get your technology right, that it is providing a good experience. And maybe that was just a setting that somebody overlooked, right?
Usually it is.
And so try it out from the candidate perspective and see if the same thing would happen to you, and get back with your vendor to make sure that it is still a good experience, even if it's one way, because that can be awkward, Yeah. This could be awkward. Doing it two way could be awkward.
For sure.
But it doesn't have to be. You can certainly do the things that can enhance that. So, a couple of other things just very quickly that I wanted to talk about is when we're talking about digital technologies and moving your recruiting process, all of it from stem to stern online, the opportunity for assessments. Maybe you've done assessments before for your candidate pool and you've used paper testing, or you've done things where you maybe had them prepare a presentation. Well, that doesn't need to stop just because you've moved to a virtual environment. You could have them record their presentation. You could have them do those sorts of things. Answer for that sort of thing. You could give situational judgment scenarios to them and ask them, to talk through those sorts of things and to share their answers with you. If you can provide a Zoom platform for them or something that's similar to a Zoom platform, don't hear me advocate for any one tool, as we're talking through all this sort of thing, but I do know that Zoom has the capability that they could record themselves and then they could shoot you the link back, and you'd be able to see their presentation style and or to hear what they had to say as far as some of the situational judgments. Because you may have to kind of skip some of the interviewing processes that you have done before because you just don't have the bandwidth to bring them, to have them sit through 4 or 5 different folks or that sort of thing. So you may want to move or engage in an assessment phase to kind of push the process along a little bit faster. And you can certainly do that digitally just like you might have done it in your office. So whether we're talking about skills-based tests or logic tests or behavioral tests, those virtual situational judgments, personality tests, all that sort of stuff. You can open that up. Now, whether you want to put that to the front, maybe it used to be in the back of your process and you want to move it more to the front so you can whittle through a larger candidate pool for this for this cycle that we're going to be in right away. Maybe that's a thought too. And you know what it might do? It might open up more candidates to you than you thought, because it may help you to identify somebody that you might have passed over if you were just looking at them on paper. Pushing your assessments up in the process may be a good thing for you to do, be able to hire a more diverse pool of people and look at people a little differently than you thought to look at them in the past.
And certainly the assessment world, when it comes to hiring and vetting candidates, has come a long way. And
right.
I think I can't quote the exact research right now, but the research is definitely indicating that we have a higher chance of identifying higher performing and high performance individuals when we use an assessment that is matched to the job, and ideally matched to the culture.
Exactly that. And I know if you do nothing else but add behavioral-based interviewing into your program, you're going to increase your odds like 5.5 times, to 5.5 factor of hiring the right person, because past behavior indicates future behavior. If you loan somebody some money before and they never paid you back, you're going to loan them money again? No. So it gives you the opportunity to kind of take a look. So I do know that one tip alone can increase your success rate, if you will. I've talked about a lot of tools. I've dropped a lot of names about different social media platforms and different, communication tools and that sort of thing. But you want to make sure that if you make an investment in this, that you're making smart investments, right? So maybe sit down and talk to the people who help you recruit before you even engage in some of this. You may find that they found some shortcuts and some hacks and some tools that they're using already right now, and you don't even know it, right? So make sure that you get with them and you talk to them about the tools that they've been using. But before you invest, make sure all your tools can talk to each other, right? It's not going to do you any good if you go to social or like mobile recruiting, as we mentioned before, and you get your website all set up and you're all linked through on your social media and that sort of thing, and then they get to your CRM or your ATS and the wheels fall off because that's not mobile enabled. So you want to make sure before you invest that the tools do integrate with one another. But if you can find the right tools, you're going to save yourself a ton of time, and I think you're going to recruit better for your vacancies. And then lastly, just speaking to the teams. So what, you have all the fancy tools, right? If your team's not trained in how to use them, I think then you've just spent a lot of money that was for naught, right? So make sure that they understand how to use them, and not just use them, not bare bones, but use them to their fullest. Look at new ways to use things and to really leverage those technologies that you bring in. And that they're doing it all the way through. Like, don't get them all heady about social media and then have it drop off when they're not consistent with their communications in the application phase and the interview phase, right? It's got to carry all the way through, because otherwise you're going to lose the trust and respect of your prospects. And you lose it, you get one chance, right? And then they're gone. So you want to make sure that your entire strategy, and we just hit on the surface of all this kind of stuff, right? But you want to make sure that from creating awareness of your organization and your employment brand, if you will, to getting these new hires on board with your organization, that it's consistent all the way through, and that it speaks to an organization that's digitally expedient, if you will, or digitally trained. Because that's what we're all going to be looking for in the future, right?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. We haven't even really touched on, where does the experience of working with the job posting sites come in the grand scheme of it?
Yeah. So, clearly, if your website, maybe you were Johnny on the spot and you got a career website, but it says, if you're interested in working with XYZ company, contact recruiting at xyz.com, right? not a good experience. Because number one, I don't know what jobs you have open. I don't know who that's going to. I don't know who recruiting is. And I want to feel some sort of connection with the human being somewhere along the process. It is human resources, by the way. Yeah. So your applicant tracking system or whatever methodologies, even if it's a spreadsheet, on the back end side that you're keeping up with your folks, you've got to have some mechanism to track and to make sure that you're staying in communication. So ATS's applicant tracking systems are somewhat affordable now. They run the gamut from being very simple to use to being very highly sophisticated, where you can push your social media and everything, kind of a one-stop shop. But the entry to that world is relatively inexpensive for the payoffs, right? But making sure that, again, that it speaks to all the different tools that you might be using, and can be successful, that your team can work it and work it well. But definitely to automate that function is going to be important moving forward, because just to be able to keep up,
Similar to like a CRM, a customer relationship manager.
So an applicant tracking system is exactly that. So if you're on the line and you're thinking about, I don't even know what that means. It's like a customer relationship management tool for your sales folks, but this one is pointed towards your prospective employees.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are so sophisticated that you can keep using them even after you've onboarded the person, right? And they just, now you start to track, they were a prospect, now they're an employee, and you can take it forward and continue to track them through that tool for the life of that employee.
Any last minute best practices around your job listings on the different boards, or working with some boards over others and integrating that with your overall plan?
Yeah, I think you have to make sure that if you are going to go the job board route, job boards aren't for everybody, right? I think you have to discern, do I want a lot of candidates, or do I want just a few right candidates? Like what do I want here? And then choose your job board based on the kind of flow that you expect. Because I can guarantee you can go on some of those major job boards, you're going to get candidates, but is that a good use of your time, right? So you may identify that maybe there's a job board associated with your association, and that didn't sound right, a job board that's tied in an organization that you belong to, an industry association or something like that, that could get you more niche or right candidates because they have the experiences that you're looking for. So don't just say, oh, I have a job opening, I've got to go out here on the big boards. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe there's other things. Maybe you don't have to go on a job board at all, and you can use social media as a way to attract the right talent. LinkedIn has a job boards component. Facebook has a component. You can put your jobs on there, and a lot of the social media platforms you can promote a job posting. You can pay, and you usually just pay based on the number of people who click all the way through. And so it's a relatively inexpensive way to go about it. Yet the reach is huge, because how many people are on social media, right? But you have to have a good enough program that you've got a good presence on that social media, because you wouldn't want to do that if they come back and they see that you've had 2 posts on Facebook since 2018 and you don't look very robust. Right?
That does not look good.
Right. So again, it's all about that consistency from one place to the next, but making sure that they're all locked in and locked on.
Any advice for our participants around the different levels of candidates that you're looking for? So let's say you're recruiting for your mid-level or your frontline or your executive team. How are those digital strategies different? And is that too big of a question to ask in 2 minutes?
You're right. No, I do think that you can use those tools effectively at all levels. Like I said, those one-way interviews, that may be something that you want to engage with if you're hiring a lot of either technically savvy people that you want to kind of cut through some of that, or a lot of just repetitive hiring, right? And so those one-way interviews may be good. Maybe investing in a texting tool, a text blast type tool that can blast to especially skilled workers who aren't on their computers, aren't on the job boards necessarily, they're busy working, right? You want to be able to text to them and have them be able to respond whenever. It's convenient for them. And there are some tools available where you can say, hey, we have this opportunity. If you're interested, text 69497 to, to this number or whatever. And via text, they can respond to some basic interview questions, or they can call in and record their answers to some basic interview screening kind of questions, and you can get through the stack a little bit easier that way. I would say with senior level talent, I think definitely to use some of the professional tools, the LinkedIn's, job boards that are really geared towards those people in higher salary brackets and higher skill levels is the approach. Again, you're not trying to get tons of candidates, you're trying to get that one right candidate. And for mid-level, it's really, again, fishing where the fish are. And I think probably for mid-level folks, you'd like to have somebody who has some exposure to your industry, or maybe you don't. Maybe you want somebody fresh, and a new idea, but maybe to look a little bit more pointed at industry type sites could be a good tool for that.
Okay. Wow. That hour went by really fast. Thank you very much, Jill. That was great. Thank you guys for joining us. I want to share with you guys just a couple of things. Turnkey Coaching Solutions has sponsored the summit, and we've got a couple of crisis management and outplacement programs and packages that we're putting out there as name your own price. Not because they're not valuable, not because we like doing things for cheap, but because we know that it is our role right now to be of service. And we know that many of our clients are having to do the hard thing and outplace some of their workers. So one of our high tech, high touch programs is an outplacement program that is name your own price. If you're in that situation and we might be able to support you, don't hesitate to give me a call. I also want to share with you guys a little bit about how to get in touch with us. And if you'll switch that one, there you go. One more. There we go. Our buy one, get one virtual training is also available, and those are around crisis management topics. And you guys give us a call anytime if we may be of service, 281-469-4244. And earlier we shared how to grab the HR report from Insperity, which was turnkeycoachingsolutions.net/HR report. So Jill, thank you so much. This was great.
Guys.
And I really appreciate you sharing your expertise.
No worries. I'll see you next week.
Next week. All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care, stay safe and healthy.